Wars have always been costly and chaotic for both parties, especially if one of them surrenders for a long time. We have heard and learned about many wars throughout history that took place for several reasons, some of which were due to regional conflicts and others to spread cultural influences and others because of religious differences, and the end of wars is long or short, and it lasted for several months, including several years or decades, and others that lasted for centuries as well. Today we are going to talk about the 10 most famous wars in history. It started in the year 1337 AD and did not end until 1453 AD and lasted for more than 100 years. This war was a turning point in the history of European battles, in which the role of valiant cavalry ended, and for the first time, the English longbow was used. This war broke out when the English King Edward III attempted to take the French throne and regain the English territories that had previously been lost to France. During the years of this epic war, a large number of small wars ended with the victory of France when the English King Henry VI was forced to neglect his endeavors in France and focus on his country, and people doubted the stability of his mental health, which led to the outbreak of the Wars of the Roses a few years later. The English Civil War, which raged between 1642 and 1651, was a power struggle between King Charles I and Parliament that shaped the country's future. It led to a preliminary formula of a balance between parliamentary government and the monarchy, a balance that continues today. But that civil war was not actually a single war, but 3 separate wars were declared in those 9 years. Charles II finally ascended to the throne, with Parliament's approval, of course. The inhabitants of the American colonies have been deliberating about independence from Britain for a while, but the fires of revolution did not start until near the end of the French and Indian War. The American Revolution took place, officially, in 1775 and ended in 1783 with an uprising against the British throne, but the official Declaration of Independence was on July 14, 1776, and the war did not end until the Treaty of Paris in 1783 after years of battles across the American colonies. Not long after the American Revolution, the modern state in England became embroiled in a new war that broke out in 1812 and lasted until 1815 AD. The causes of the wars are multiple, and among the causes of the War of 1812 are the trade disputes and the support of the British forces to the indigenous people on the borders of the state. The newly formed American armies fought well. It even tried to invade parts of Canada, but the short war did not end with a clear victory for one of the parties, although it increased the pride and self-esteem of the young country and its sense of national identity. After American officers fought the Second Seminole War in Florida, they were well trained to run the next war, whose story began when Texas gained independence from Mexico in 1836 and culminated when the newly independent nation joined the United States of America in 1845. The stage was set for battle by 1846, and in May of that year, U.S. President James Polk demanded a declaration of war on Mexico, and the battles quickly crossed the Texas frontier to the California coast. Finally, the southern borders of America were drawn with the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in 1848 and included the lands that would soon become the states of California, Nevada, Texas, and Utah, as well as parts of Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Wyoming. The American Civil War will be considered one of the bloodiest and most divisive in history. It divided the members of the same family against each other, while the North and the South fought fierce battles that killed a total of about 600,000 soldiers from both sides. That is more than the number of soldiers killed in the rest of America's wars combined. The cause of the Civil War was the desire of the Confederate States of America to withdraw from the Union, and behind this cause were many factors, including slavery, state rights, and political power. This conflict was maturing over the years until it caught fire, despite the relentless efforts to prevent it. War broke out in 1861 and battles raged until Commander Robert Lee surrendered to Commander Ulysses Grant at Appomattox in 1865 AD. The United States survived, but the Civil War left scars on the nation that took a long time to heal, like the scars wars usually leave. The Korean Peninsula fell prey to the war that broke out between America and South Korea, supported by the United Nations on one side and Communist North Korea on the other, in the period 1950 to 1953 AD. The Korean War is considered by many to be just one of the many wars and conflicts that made up the Cold War. At that time, the United States tried to stop the spread of communism, and the division in Korea was only the result of the division of the country between America and Russia after the end of World War II. The French fought in the state of Vietnam in Southeast Asia during the 50s of the 20th century, which led to the division of the country into two parts, the northern one of which is controlled by a communist government, which reminds us of the scene in Korea that preceded the Vietnamese scene by a decade. When the leader Ho Chi Minh invaded democratic South Vietnam in 1959 AD, America sent assistance to train the Southern Army, but the mission soon changed. By 1964, the North Vietnamese were attacking the American forces in Vietnam, which led to the end of the war. President Lyndon Johnson sent the American forces fighting in 1965, and here the events began to escalate. The war ended in 1974 with the withdrawal of the Americans and the signing of a peace treaty, and in April 1975 the South Vietnamese Army, which had been left by the American forces fighting alone, failed to stop the fall of the southern capital Saigon, and the North Vietnamese forces were victorious. The 19th century witnessed many conflicts and wars, but no one was able to predict what the 20th century would carry, as this century became the era of many global conflicts and wars, and it began with the outbreak of the First World War in 1914 AD. The assassination of the Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand on July 28, 1914 led to the outbreak of this war, which lasted until 1918 AD. It had begun with two alliances, the Allied powers and the Axis powers, consisting of three countries that fought each other. The first included Britain, France, and Russia, while the second included Germany, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Ottoman Empire. By the end of the war, other countries had participated in it, such as the United States, while the fighting took part of most of Europe, destroying it, leaving about 15 million people dead. But this was only the beginning, as the First World War set the stage for the Second. It is difficult to imagine the extent of the devastation that may be left behind only 6 years of battles and wars, but what happened in World War II was a war on a scale that the world had never seen before. As in the previous war, countries aligned themselves on two sides. The Axis powers, which included Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Japan, and the Allied powers, which included Great Britain, France, Russia, China, and the United States. This war broke out for a number of reasons, including the weak global economy, the Great Depression, and the rise of Hitler and Mussolini to the hierarchy of power in their countries. And what sparked the war was Germany's invasion of Poland. This world war deserved its name well, as it affected all continents and countries in one way or another, although most of the fighting took place in Europe, North Africa, and Asia, and its devastating strikes were concentrated in the old continent. Tragedies and atrocities have been documented in many places, such as the Holocaust, which killed more than 11 million people, including about 6 million Jews. The last season of the war saw the deaths of about 70 to 80 million Japanese when America dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That's all for today. Don't forget to like the video and share it with your friends. And also tell us in the comments section about ideas for upcoming videos.